Mm. Hello.
Hello.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you.
I am here. This is Victoria Clarke reporting live from New York. This is episode 112 of our Overdose and Chill series. I'm joined today with Chantele Gibson of Searchspring. She is the VP of Partnerships and a friend and colleague of mine for a long time now. Chantele, thank you so much for being on Overdose and Chill with us.
Well, thanks for having me.
First and foremost, many people don't know, but we've actually worked together for a very long time throughout different agencies and experiences. But you've been with Searchspring for a very long time, which feels like a very long time. Can you tell me about like when you started there and how it's grown?
Yeah, for sure. So you're aging me. I really appreciate that, Victoria.
No problem.
But
Aging
I've been with,
well.
yeah, I've been with Searchspring, oh gosh, 11 and a half years, almost 12 years. I started out as the fourth employee. So I have really seen the company, start out as next to a car wash where you would hear rap music playing and I'd be on the phone and everybody would be like, what's going on? Where do you work?
Yeah.
To, almost, 150 plus employees today. Went through an acquisition in 2019, acquired one of our competitors and then another competitor. And then most recently we had a strategic investment. So I've seen the company, go from, basically a growing business to a much more mature business.
That's and honestly, one thing I love about Searchspring is you have some of the best brands that you service. Can you tell us first what the platform does, and not to make it boring for everyone, but I think it's important that people know kind of why Searchspring is really the leader in that personalization.
Yeah. So we really are a search provider, no pun intended, because we have search in our name, but we're really about product findability. So we focus on on-site search, merchandising, and personalization. Those are kind of our three core offerings. And I think really the end goal for any merchant or brand that we work with is just to really help them ensure that they're getting the right product to the right person at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I personally look at it is there's kind of two components, producing that nice shopping experience so that their customers can find what they're looking for. But also we're giving these merchants and brands functionality that doesn't normally exist natively in the platform.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of hit a component or a part in their business where they need more what is offered natively. And through that, we can save them time and make it a lot easier for them. But end goal is we want to make sure that the right product is available and, giving them that functionality that they need, they're starving for.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really interesting because there's nothing really like in-person experiences, but I think that your company shows the value in, e-commerce, because there's things that when you don't have that in-person, a sales associate helping you find the right things, you really want to leverage a technology that has that, AI component, like being able to understand what your user or what the user will typically search for, how they, things that get populated, what you surface, and based on popularity, things like that. And I've seen it work across so many sites that, you guys work with, like Skims, for example. I know you work with them, and that's a brand that I know you've seen a lot of success with. Can you Tell me a little bit about like what you've noticed in all of your years in just in the e-commerce world. Like how have you seen things change?
Yeah, things have changed dramatically. I mean, e-commerce in itself is, always evolving, right? So I think one thing to note is, yes, I've been with the company almost 12 years, but what was, um, you know, 10 years ago isn't today. And I like the point that you made. You don't get that in store. You go into Nordstrom, somebody immediately greets you and says, what can I help you find? You don't get that experience online. So again, really making sure that they can find products.
Mhm.
And I think, search is never going to go away.
Right.
When I think about relevancy, for example, you could search for a black lace dress and you're looking for that black lace dress, but you're getting things that are maybe lace, not black, maybe dresses, not, so forth. And so making sure that they're really truly getting to black lace dresses. But
Mhm.
then think about it this way too, and I'm going to use, Pure Vita. Somebody could search for bracelets. Well, you know what? Bracelets are going to appear, but are they the best selling bracelet? Are they their top selling? Are they in stock? You know, do they have the highest margin? Are they, trending on Instagram? So there's so many ways of looking at what is truly that right product. So I think something that's really interesting that I've seen over the years is search was very prominent 10 years ago. It still is, but I think it's very industry dependent.
Yes.
If you're dealing with 300,000 SKUs, maybe you're in automotive, you got lots of different parts or a very complex catalog, search is important. But then you look at somebody like Skims, who has a smaller catalog. Most folks know exactly what they're looking for because Kim Kardashian,
Mhm, mhm.
posted on Instagram and now they want that product. And it's just making sure they can find it quickly.
Right.
And I think merchandising is one thing where I see it being more prominent than search today. But again, it comes down to the industry. As we look into the future, I think personalization at one point was a buzzword, but today, show me products. If I already bought a red dress, why are you showing me things that are, red dresses?
Mhm.
I've already bought a red dress.
Right.
Show me other things, brands or other products that might be relevant to me based on previous purchases. And I think even as we look into the future, that's going to change too, where it's going to become a little bit more conversational, right? You land on a site, you might get a chat like, what are you looking for? Well, I'm looking for a red dress. Well, here's some, suggested red dresses. That's personalization or product recommendations, right? It's more conversational
Right.
as well. So I think really it kind of started search focused, then kind of went into merchandising, kind of personalization, and then I kind of see this conversational approach, really the way of the future.
Absolutely. And again, those are just two of the many brands that you have worked with. I think
Mhm.
interesting. I noticed that surfacing what is going to be most compelling is the most important thing when looking at a user experience, because I think if you are not getting what you need on those 3 seconds that you're on that site and really searching, and you feel like you don't have the visibility to really, you don't want to search through thousands of things. So I think using something and leveraging Searchspring to really understand who your customer is based on the data that they've brought to their site is a great, starting off point to then filter that based on what you think that they might be interested in, product wise. Um, so I think so. You guys are based in, are you kind of, work remote, or how has that been, with everything since you guys are growing? How have you
Yeah.
found that scalability in this time?
Yeah. So we were founded in Colorado Springs, which is where I'm based. We do have a Denver office as well, and then headquartered in San Antonio, Texas. But we have offices in Portland, Toronto, um, APAC, so Sydney, and then we have a diverse team. So my team alone, I have Vancouver, Toronto, Texas, Sydney, Melbourne, like you name it. So we're a little bit of a diverse team, but I think our company culture allows us to connect really well, even though we're all dispersed. But it also has allowed us to grow because we're not just focusing on, North America. And I say North America because Canada and the US, we are, looking into the UK. We have clients and partners in the UK, in the APAC region. And I see us to continue to expand into other regions as well.
I think it's really interesting just touching on, how things are done in Europe. And it's you'd think that the user experience with, merchants there would be just similar to here. But when we've worked at Overdose with, similarly are very global based. And I noticed that a lot of the user experience and just best practices are not always applied. I feel like we have a very, if I may say so myself, we being North America is a step ahead in terms of really making sure that a UX experience matches that of what you want a global audience to be able to really adapt to. I think it's interesting that I assume that just because, for instance, a brand that we work with here's site is, great and has a great UX and UI experience, their European site might be a totally different story. So I think the fact that you're also expanding into those areas and markets is really going to help leverage the experience you have here in the United States and then help brands grow that aren't based here.
Yeah. And I think another point that I failed to mention is looking at how things have evolved over the years. A lot of merchants and brands, to your point, they might have started in a region, whether that's North America or the UK, and now they're looking to expand into other regions. So having a farther global reach, but that doesn't mean that experience should be the same, right? Yeah. I think even East Coast and West Coast. So if I'm selling clothing, you're not going to show West Coast, parkas in November. You're going to show more maybe lightweight jackets or things that are going to match that geographic location. And I think having Searchspring, being able to give them the tools where they can merchandise across the globe. And some companies don't even have teams across the globe. It could be somebody sitting in the US, trying to merchandise for the UK as well. And you're like, well, what should I merchandise? And
right.
Having that data again to really supplement that, but again, having the tools to be able to do that because they are so limited natively.
Exactly. So as the VP of partnerships, what is your favorite thing about your job, your role?
Well, it's funny you asked me that. So today, my one of my directors, I'm not going to call him out because he'll kill me, but we were talking and he's like, everybody in partnerships thinks that, the partner team does nothing, right? And we actually work really hard. We are a main asset to the overall company revenue. We are a need to the business. But it was funny because he said to me, sometimes I even doubt myself, like, what somebody would call work. I'm at a baseball game for 12 hours. I'm at dinner, I'm having drinks. And I look back and I'm like, I'm hanging out with friends to some degree. And this is what is work. Yeah. So it's funny because we definitely have a good time. We work hard. We're a strong asset to the business, but sometimes you have to sit back and check yourself, like, does this really work? Because it didn't feel like it, even though we're putting 12 hours and, at the end of the day, we're like, we don't want to talk to anybody else. We just exhausted everything we could possibly say. So sometimes we have to check ourselves, I think, in this role, especially in partnerships. But they're so valuable because that in-person, you and I, like in person, we can't replace that. Yeah, we can sit on Google Meet or, have a phone call, but there's nothing like being in person, having dinner, catching up and talking business. And it doesn't feel like business.
No.
Right?
I think it's interesting that you say that because similarly in sales and which is it's really
partnerships is sales to some degree, right?
Yeah. And it's really knowing how to connect with people. And it is, going to dinners and meeting people and really gaining that level of trust is a huge asset to your company. And, really being that first contact with Searchspring is, it takes a lot of energy. And I think what we've all realized after COVID is that
Yeah.
after being away from people, there's a certain level of energy it brings you, but it's also very exhausting when you
Yeah.
step back. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe I just spent 10 hours at a conference talking to people about, but then you leave and you're like, wow, I met so many great people, and you continue to build on that relationship. And which is something I'm really excited about for the future, is just knock on wood that things are kind of opening up a bit more and we can see people in person, and the people we forged relationships with over these past 2 years that we hadn't been able to really connect with in person. Having that opportunity, I think, is monumental to solidifying that trust. But yeah, I agree. I think it can be, you have to be like, wait, that was work. Something that you would deem to be, I also think it's something that we deem to be really kind of easy for someone like us might be very difficult for someone who really does not like conversing and speaking to other people. So I think there's like a trade-off. It takes a certain person to be able to do what you do, but also realizing that there's a reason you're good at it, because yeah.
And I'm old school, right? I think people still buy from people they like and trust, right? And, I always joke, well, you're not going to get married until you go on your first date. Well, maybe in today's age,
Yeah.
there are people that do that, right? But
There's
in the,
about that.
yeah, exactly. But you're going to buy from somebody who that you trust, who they're going to deliver on. They're not going to overpromise and underdeliver. And I think it goes to partnerships too. Everybody says, well, how long does it take to establish a partnership? And I said, it can take a while, because you're not just going to, have a call and say, okay, let's be partners, because the relationship perspective is so heavy.
Yeah.
Yes, you have to have a great product and a great service and great pricing and all that stuff. Who are kidding? But at the end of the day, you really do have to, trust that company, feel that there is a relationship, get to know them on a personal level. And it doesn't always have to be just about business.
No.
Either.
I think that's a really good point you brought up, because I think a lot of times we forget that it is a big responsibility to be in these roles as well, because you are the one that is that point person, being, moving that trust and saying, this is what we're about and why you should trust us, and things like that. And so I think it's definitely a responsibility, in addition to it being a great asset to being such a good person to be representing the company. But it's also important that we obviously do our job and make sure that we are selling the right product at the right time, and doing so not just trying to kind of be, no offense to car salesmen, but just like not not trying to just make sure that the person leaves the lot with a car. Sometimes it's about waiting and making sure it's the right fit.
Right. And I think that's important too. And in what Searchspring does is we aren't trying to feature push, right? I think our process is very unique in the sense of, what are tell me about the business, what are, from when it started to where you guys are today, what are the challenges you're seeing? What are things you wish you could have that you don't have? And not trying to oversell them on everything. Maybe they really just need a robust search. They don't need, recommendations and personalization. They're not there yet, right? Where a more sophisticated merchant might say, I need everything. I want to increase conversions, and that's great. Let's talk through that. So really identifying what are those needs, and then solving those needs first, because there is opportunity to grow and expand or optimize, especially thinking of the agency world. Like I always think about, there's kind of two stages, right? You're scoping out a new project. Okay, what are these immediate needs that we need to address. But then there's this long-term plan
Yes.
where they're going to need more at some point potentially, and the data might help direct that, or they might run into a situation where, okay, I've exhausted the native capabilities, now I need this.
Mhm.
Funny story, I was in New York, and I won't name the brand because they will kill me, but it was actually my CEO and I, we took a trip to New York, and we were sitting there with an e-commerce merchandiser, and we said, well, how do you decide what products to put on the site in what order? And she kind of looked at me and she's like, do we have that decision? And I was like, yes, you do, but how do you decide? And she's like, our CEO just kind of tells us, but he has no e-commerce experience. We're not using data to define this. And we were like,
Basically what he thinks looks, whatever he decides.
yeah. And we were like, wow, well, we don't want to get you in trouble with your job, but what about if we look at the data and say, hey, let's try these results in this order, and then let's use your CEO's approach, and then let's compare. Maybe he is right. Probably not, but let's kind of give him something to at least have some data to support that backing. And I think a lot of people don't know what to do, even if you're a sophisticated merchant, which this was a very sophisticated brand. Sometimes people just don't know, and they're really looking for guidance as well.
Absolutely. That's super interesting. I think that was one of the best things I got from one of the first demos that I did with you a long time ago, was really showing as I mentioned, looking back and talking through the fact that like in person is invaluable. There's so much that we can do digitally to drive to drive that product and really surface what they're looking for. And I thought it was, sometimes it's even better to, shop digitally. I think it's
easier.
Yeah, exactly. And if you have the ability to put more power in the hands of the provider and the person who is really connecting with the customer, that's so invaluable and would obviously lead to a lot of revenue and conversion.
And not to take away from an agency, but think of it this way. We want to work alongside Overdose, right? You guys build this beautiful website for this great brand, and that's great. It looks great. But if you get to the site and you can't find anything, that's where Searchspring comes into play. And I think what's important is we're really only a small part of the whole e-commerce journey, right? There's so many other things, website design and UI, the marketing. I can't get a million customers to come to your site, but what I can do is when they get there, I can make sure that they find what they're looking for. And that I can feel really confident about. I can't build you a beautiful site. That's not what we do. That's why we have been in alignment for so long. But I think we have to work hand in hand because, again, there's these investments that are made. Even SEO, I laugh sometimes. They're paying all this money for these top searches in Google, but then you go to the site, you can't find that. So, everything works hand in hand. And I think that's so key. You can't just use one or the other.
Yes. I think two things that I think why we work so well together is like you said, waiting for the right time to ask a merchant, okay, is this the right time for us to introduce you to personalization, or not personalization, but
Whatever.
merchandising, something like that. Because say like search and autocomplete is when I'm looking at Zimmerman as a case study that you guys did, and that's another brand that I love. And rather than being so pushy about like one size fits all, you need this, this, and this, it's that's not how all brands are built. Some need to scale slowly, and it doesn't sometimes make sense for them to have all the gadgets, because it would probably even further confuse the user if there's not, if it's super intuitive already. Don't fix what's not broken. But at the same time, like you said, a lot of times when we work with clients, and why Overdose I think is so great, particularly for the reason you're mentioning, is we provide you with other resources around SEO, data, things like that, that a lot of times agencies don't want to touch, which makes total sense. It's a very different practice, but it's all one kind of all encompassing. You need PR. I was in the PR world. You can't just launch a site online and expect people to come. It's just so much more robust than that.
Yeah.
And like you said, if someone's like, okay, well, we installed Searchspring, does that mean that, now everyone's going to shop on our site? It's like, no, there have to be so many other things that come.
So many other pieces.
Exactly. But I know you guys have been in the industry for such a long time, and I'm so excited for, the growth. It sounds like, what are sort of some exciting things that are happening, in the future for you guys?
Yeah. So I think, just to end that one topic.
Yeah.
Even if we're talking Zimmerman or Skims or Mother Denim or, some of the other great brands we work with, maybe they're all in fashion apparel to some capacity, but their needs are all different. The way that they merchandise, some have lean teams, which even a very sophisticated merchant, we've seen they've had very lean teams, where others are, they have larger teams, right? And trying to make those teams become one, right? So I think where I see the future going is a couple different things. One, making it really easy for merchants. I think, and brands, I think we do a good job today, but we always want to make it easy because no matter the size of the merchant, we don't want to make it hard for them to merchandise or to manage, anything that they're doing in e-commerce. I think the other piece is, looking for more complementary services or strategic integrations. I think there's a lot that we work with today, Yapo or Klaviyo of the world, where we can kind of take what they're doing on site and use it in other areas. But even SEO, right? Even though there might not be an integration, looking at their top search terms to figuring out maybe what they should be, putting, paying for. So I think, expanding that, I think we'll never stop growing globally. We don't have an actual office in the UK today. We have partners and customers, but, building that region out, I think that's something that I could see happening in the near future. One thing I think I love about Searchspring is what's made me stay here for so long, because you have to be a little bit passionate about the product you sell.
Sure.
Is that we're constantly looking at what do our customers need and want? What do our partners need and want? And that's how we really define our product roadmap. We don't just kind of pull out these items from a hat and say, oh yeah, we're going to build this because we think this is going to work.
Right.
There's a lot of thought leadership that goes into what we develop. And as we evolve as an organization, do I know if we're going to, acquire any more businesses in the future? I don't know that. But I think anything that we can do to, again, make it easier for our customers and, expand globally, I think is definitely something, in the next 12 to 24 months that will probably be our focus.
When you first started off at Searchspring, what was your role?
Yeah, so I was an AE. Well, actually, I was kind of an everything. And what I mean by that, I was the fourth employee.
Right.
So I was sales, I was partnerships, I was CS, support to some degree. And it was funny because I'm sitting there selling to, a customer at the time, and things have changed in almost 12 years. I mean, the phones would ring, which, I mean, I don't know if phone rings anywhere, but, and I'm looking at this and I'm working with an agency and I'm like, so you guys do about 10 projects a year? Okay, well, why don't we have a partner program? Like, I could have a really good relationship with, one person and have, 10 opportunities. So it kind of organically grew the partner team. And obviously over the years, I managed their sales team, partnerships, and now, primarily focusing on global sales or global partnerships today. Sorry. But yeah, no, I was an AE, I was selling. And I still like to sell. My team sometimes has to say, shut up, Chantelle.
Yeah.
Like, you're joining this call. You set up this meeting. The sales team will be laughing and they're like, she says she's not going to talk, but she's going to. So we'll just kind of let her go.
But there's a value in the fact that you've been, I mean, that is pretty remarkable these days, 12-year tenure at a had a third, like a company that I think has really, really shown as apps and stuff have come and gone, and you have continued to be really resilient and shown the value of the product. And I think, but the reason I was asking you about what your first role was really to say also that any opportunity for you to grow in a role, and I feel like that's what we had talked about before, is
Mhm.
the opportunity that you've been able to get your hands dirty doing a lot of different things, but at the same time see the company also grow, rather than being sort of in this small company doing everything forever, because that can also that's where burnout, I think, really happens. To an extent. But I think the fact that in your case that you've been able to do that, but also see the company grow and scale, and your position really have that trajectory of going into VP of partnerships, is definitely a part of why I think you've been able to really flourish for as long as you have at one company. Um,
Yeah. I think growth is interesting because, you look at the e-commerce industry, which is large, but it's quite small, right? We're all interconnected, as we've been
Mhm.
talking about. And some might say, wow, she's been there almost 12 years. Like, that's,
How old is
maybe she's, what's wrong with her, or others might say to, similar to you, like, that's great. You've kind of wore multiple hats. You really know the business, right? I definitely think there's pros and cons. I think, change is always hard,
Yeah.
right? And I'm a little OCD. And so as you grow as a company, there's things that you kind of have to give up.
Yes.
And sometimes that's hard too, because you're like, job stability, like, I don't want to give that up. Or
Right.
I think this is working really well. I don't want them
Mhm.
to do things differently than
Right.
I am. But I also think it's good too, because you can become really focused, right? And I think the other thing is, I'm constantly being challenged. So even though I've been here 12 years, I learn something new every day.
Right.
And because it changes so frequently, I think that's what's exciting to me. If we didn't, have an evolving product, or a growing business, I probably wouldn't have stayed.
Yeah.
But it's still exciting to me, and it's still, ever changing, right?
That's amazing. And
And I'm humbled by the fact that you think I'm, this great thing, but
you
I'm
are.
really not.
You
I
are.
think
You
I'm
also
definitely
are.
successful because of my team. I
Yeah.
think where the product is, the leadership, the culture. I think there's so many things that makes me successful. I'm really successful because of the efforts of all
Right.
these other things.
No, I mean, I think that's very nice of you to say, but I've also worked with you for a while, so I do know that you are as special as I said you are. I also do want to note that you have your mom, and I think it is really also a great thing when that you've been able to. How many children do you have?
2. Hmm.
So I'm assuming you've had them one.
So 11 and 7. So in my entirety of this career, I've had my children. And
Yeah.
the first child I had, it's funny. Sorry, Scott and Gareth, but there was no maternity policy. So when I was like, I'm pregnant, I'm from Canada, so you get like a year maternity leave. I'm
Right.
I'm
Right.
like, I'm pregnant. So what's this maternity policy? And they're like, we don't have one. And I'm
Well, a
like,
lot
well,
of
we need one,
yeah.
right? So we kind of, I kind of helped shape that
You
too.
piloted the first maternity program.
Yes.
No,
Um,
that's great.
so I think it's interesting because my kids, they love and hate that their mom works. I have 2 girls, so they're motivated to see, like, my mom is a strong female.
Mm,
She works harder. My husband always says, You're the hardest person. You work the hardest than anybody I know. But I also have the flexibility to be a mom. And I think that's what's key for me too, as well, is I get to do both things. I get to work and
mhm.
I get to raise my girls, right?
And that is what I wanted to also point out, is because that's not an easy, especially working from home. I think it's incredible to be able to juggle that. But with that in mind, talking a bit more about not so much about work and unless there's anything you want to say, but I wanted to kind of talk more about what you like to do. You know, you're based in Colorado. What are some of the things you like to do when you're not working as hard as you are?
Yeah, well, my life is consumed with kids stuff. So my kids really dictate my schedule. It's track or it's soccer or it's this or that. But something that's really interesting about me is, and everybody knows this, for a long time, 13 years, to be honest, I take December off and I go to Cabo and we spend Christmas there. And we really try, well, even before my kids were born, get out of the whole motion of presence. Let's learn from the culture.
Yeah.
Yes, we are going to Cabo, and everybody's like, isn't that where the celebrities go and stuff?
No, but
We're sitting in a residence. We're not in a hotel. We have friends there. We went, we go to Christmas dinner and it's very different. They're making carne asada and there's no gifts and they're shooting, BB guns on this dirt road. And my kids are like, what is this? But it's made us who we are today. And I think it allows me to reset it at the end of every year. I get the beach, I get the vacation, but I'm also kind of teaching my kids a lesson. So Cabo's my second home.
I love Cabo.
Mm-hmm.
I went to San Jose del Cabo.
That's where we stay. San Jose del Cabo. And actually Puerto Los Cabo is actually really where our residence is.
Okay, so we stayed. Did I tell you about the time that I went down there and I stayed at this place called Acre? It's like yeah. And I fell in love, and that was the first time going to Mexico, and I fell in love with we didn't do any of the touristy things.
No, and you don't need to.
No,
because it's safe. You can walk around. They have art walk. They have festivals, great restaurants. It's beautiful.
So love that. What was the other thing you were going to say?
People actually don't know this about me, but I think I'm an artist. I try to paint. So it was kind of like, hey, my kids wanted let's get some canvas, let's get some paint for Hobby Lobby. And I think I have 50 paintings now. They're not in my home, unfortunately, because I'm a little bit shy, but it's a stress relief.
That's amazing.
I'm a social person, but I'm not, right? And so things that I enjoy are not crowds or, where there's a lot of stimulation. I need kind of that downtime. And that's one way I think that's helped me kind of be able to do that. As you both know, or as we both know, I was running and then I had to have surgery. So that was something I could do alone and really just process my emotions. Like, think about, okay, what's my husband doing or not doing today? Why do my kids make me mad today? What's my boss saying to me today? And let me unwind. I'm starting to get back into it, but it's been a little bit slow, but I will get there.
You will. I also think that's so important. I'm really glad you brought up doing things outside of work that idle time. I think it's important to not be stimulated all the time because you don't get the opportunity. There was an article I read. You don't have the opportunity to actually think about. That's when your ideas come to life, when you actually have a minute to process everything going on in your life, So I think similar to you, as we've talked about before, running has been that for me. Surfing has been that for me. Just being away from my phone, travel, I think is so important. I think it's great that your kids understand that Christmas isn't just about things,
No, it's not monetary.
No. And I think that's great and something that most people don't. And I think COVID has really shown that it's make or break in terms of making sure that you continue to work on yourself and doing things that make you happy. Because there's going to be times when you're left alone to your own devices and you really want to make sure that like you enjoy your own company. And that's super important. So how do you manage your work-life balance? Like what?
So this is funny. This is actually a really funny story. And Peter gets a kick out of this every time too. I wake up very early and I have OCD. I'm a clean freak. Closets are by color, by sleeve. Spice cabinet is alphabetized. I'm crazy, okay?
No,
I
no.
am. I'm totally crazy. But I will vacuum the couch, for instance, as an example. My husband's probably giggling right now because he can hear me. And I won't let anybody sit on the couch. And they're like, well, where are we supposed to sit? So I like to wake up early. I like to
What's
try
early?
to clean. Um, well, as I age, it's anywhere between 3:30, 5:30. But I mean, if I'm sleeping past 5:30, there's something wrong with me.
Wait a minute. What time do you go to bed?
Well, Sundays I go to bed at 6 p.m. I cook dinner at 3 o'clock. Not even kidding. And
This is the most interesting part of this.
no, this is not even a joke. My kids are like, it's this is lunch.
Okay, can we talk about this for a second? You go to bed at 6 p.m., okay?
Sundays only. During the week, I would say 9. It has to be like I might go to bed, but I might not go to sleep. 9. I don't stay up late. I can't stay up late. It wrecks me.
So you wake up and you start vacuuming?
Yeah, or just, I'll put a load of laundry, load the dishwasher. I like to wipe and then get the kids off to school. So, I have girls, they have long hair. We need to get them ready. My husband's really supportive. He'll, help a lot with the girls too, which is nice. And then I start my day. And then, depending on the day and what we got going on, get the girls from school, and then it's dinner and bedtime routines, and there we go. And that's the other thing. We cook a lot too, so we try to eat out. Um, maybe once a week. Like we try to cook. Maybe it's a grilled cheese and tomato soup. Because
Yeah.
we were at track till 8. But Sundays is kind of the elaborate cooking day, and then during the week we eat what we can. So we're very routine. That's one thing about me is I'm very routine.
That's good. It keeps you structured.
Yeah, but then it's a bad thing too, because if something happens in my work-life balance, I had to have surgery in January. I'm just like, how is this going to work? I can't drive, I can't walk, can't travel, I can't do all these things that I'm used to doing, and I'm kind of like, well, this isn't working for me. I got to figure out how to get beyond that. So
Right.
there's pros and cons to be
Moderate.
very structured, but there's also on the flip side, if you're too structured and you're not agile enough, it can almost stress you out.
For sure. So you make your kids eat at 3 p.m. on Sundays.
I'm not even kidding. And my youngest, she's 7. She'll be, Mom, this is lunch.
Okay.
So 3 o'clock, and then we have baths and showers. We get our PJs on, and it's bedtime.
But what if they're hungry again?
Well, we go to bed early. They're kind of maybe 7. Like they could have a snack. They're not forbidden food. I'm not like
You're like kitchen's closed.
I'm not like the orphanage on Annie where there's no food. But we eat a large dinner and we kind of relax.
Yeah.
But Sundays are chill day.
That's so nice.
Who doesn't want to be in PJs on Sundays?
I mean,
like if you invited me to go to dinner on Sunday, I'd be like, Victoria, I can't. I'm sorry, Sunday. Like, can we do Saturday? Can we do Monday?
Yeah, you could do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Mm-hmm,
Actually, no, if the bedtime changes from day to day of the week. But I think it's funny. I'm the total opposite. I'm a night owl.
Oh yeah.
But I can do mornings, but it's all about going to bed at the right time. Because if you don't I'm the type of person that if I don't get enough sleep, like I need a solid 8 hours.
Do you function your best first thing in the morning, middle of the day, later in the day? Everybody has a different answer. So that's what I'm asking.
I would say early and late.
Okay.
Now, middle of the day is sort of like, if I have to focus on something, it's usually early or late at night because I think middle of the day, I get so distracted by communication that it's hard to really focus on. But that's also something that I've noticed, like working remote, it's important to stay communicative throughout the day, because that's something I found that you can remove yourself and just stop learning and growing, because so much of what I learn is what I would overhear at work and people talking about and things like that.
Right.
But even though that's not happening, I think there's still a really important obligation to be like tapped in and make sure that, you're there for your team and not just, put your head down and black out on some, documentation or something.
Totally. And juggling all these time zones, right? So
Totally.
that's hard too. So, one thing, again, I'm structured, I'm OCD, with my APAC team, I will make certain evenings because that's morning for them. And I commit to that, or
Yep.
I try to, make sure I'm available in these times, but almost have it scheduled. Now, don't get me wrong. If somebody needed something, I'm going to be there, but you have to have a shut off point too,
Yes. Or else you're going to be on your device
constantly.
all day. And that's also something.
And then your husband will threaten to divorce you because all he ever hears about Searchspring, and you're always on your phone. Why are you always on your phone? You're not on Pinterest. What are you doing?
Right.
You're working, right? So
it's a lot. And so you have to really be diligent of your time. I agree. Making time for yourself, to your family. And, hopefully when I get to that point, I'm not having to go to bed at 6 o'clock, but maybe I.
But I will say, when I first started at Searchspring, I didn't shut down, right?
Right.
Because I was
Really.
not that I wasn't motivated, but I learned that you're going to get out what you put into it. And I truly believe it. And I think it comes down to the role, right? With sales, you're kind of always on, right? If that customer is going to call me at 9 o'clock, you're going to answer it.
Exactly.
That's just normal. But there has to be a point sometimes where you do set those boundaries. Somebody comes to you at 9 o'clock at night and it's end of the month, and they say, you're going back and forth. Are they really going to sign on Saturday morning? I don't think so. So I think you have to be available for your team, but
also have boundaries about like
have some boundaries too.
Because anyone can kind of contact you at any time. Everything's always urgent,
Exactly.
But I just want to say that I think you are such a joy and such a great partner and a colleague. And I'm so happy that we met all those years ago and that we continue to work together. And I'm just really excited for Searchspring and for us to continue working together and
forever. I mean, you're never going to get rid of me. So
good. Oh, we've got a question. Oh, this is a good one.
What suggestions do you have for managers of people to make sure the people on their teams are able to achieve good work-life balance? I think, me personally, you have to have a good hiring process. Number one, you have to hire people that you trust, right? I think if you're micromanaging and breathing down my team's neck, they're going to almost be less successful. But encourage that, good work-life balance. I can't speak for other organizations, but we have a flexible PTO policy. We encourage people to take time off, right? And, it might be Friday and it's, I don't know, 2 o'clock, and we're like, we had a really long week.
Yeah.
Go do something fun. Right. Go to a happy hour. Go have a drink, or, encourage it too. I think there's so many ways that you can do that. I will say it really stems from leadership. My CEO, one of his values is, he really cares about the customers, but he really is, wants to make sure that we don't feel bad if we want to take a 4-week trip to Europe. Go do that. That's going to make you a better employee, right? I think when you used to have like PTO where you're like, oh, only have 2 weeks and I got to save this PTO because my friend's getting married and, I have this or this, it makes it hard for people to have that good work-life balance. You're going to have the people that won't shut down. I have people on my team that will work on the weekends. But in their defense, they say, why does it matter when I work? I'm getting the job done, and I'm not working over the hours. I'm just working on days that I feel more productive and I'm not distracted. So I think being flexible, encouraging people to take time, rewarding them to take time, but it comes down to the hiring process and hiring people that you trust, and just knowing that they're going to get the job done ultimately.
I think that's a great answer.
Thank you for the question, by the way.
Yeah, that's my manager. She's great, Jenny. But yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, managing people is an art in and of itself.
Yep.
But thank you again. We're about
Okay.
10 minutes out, so we didn't take the full hour, but we had a lot to talk about. I think we
did.
did a lot.
I think so.
And I always have fun talking to you, Chantelle.
You too. Thank you. And I
You.
hope you have a great weekend.
You too. And
go enjoy your Friday because you are 2 hours ahead of me. So we're talking work-life balance, Jenny.
exactly.
You know, we gotta get the weekend started. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Thank you so much, Chantelle, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you again. Thank you for having me, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Okay, bye-bye.